So this story starts 4 years ago. The year's 2020, and in a matter of days, everything had changed. Instead of going to school, I was at home, looking at my laptop, staring at Zoom all day. And as you can probably imagine, I grew bored pretty quickly. But that wasn't a bad thing. I just needed a larger creative project that I could focus all of my energy into. Fortunately, an opportunity presented itself. Onewheel, who's the company that makes these self-balancing electric skateboards, was holding a contest on Instagram. Whoever made the best video about destroying boredom,
"Hey man, I'm bored,"
would win a Onewheel. And at that moment in time, winning that contest was the most important thing to me.
Let me see what I can do about that.
But my skills weren't quite there, and I only made runner-up. I even made a second stop motion for week 2 of the contest. But like many films, the sequel's never good as the original. Well, seeing as I didn't win a Onewheel, I'd have to find other ways to destroy boredom for the next 3 years. And that I did. I finished high school, went off to college to begin studying design, and continued making videos. I still thought about the Onewheel video from time to time. Some things have a way of sticking in your mind like that. And sometimes, things have a way of working out. Onewheel had asked me to build them a sculpture for their headquarters in Santa Cruz, and the best material I know of to make a sculpture is basswood. It can be hard to find, but it's well worth the effort. It's a softer hardwood, so it's easier to carve, and it has a tight grain pattern that lends well to even shaping and durability. The first thing I had to do was create a full-size template so I didn't mess up the proportions. The story goes that one of the graphic designers at Onewheel had drawn up this illustration of a Gundam holding a Onewheel. After a quick Google search, I learned that Gundam is a Japanese military science fiction media franchise. Created by Yoshiyuki Tomino and Sunrise, the franchise features giant robots or mecha with the name Gundam. While those legs are drying, I'm gonna get started on making the torso. For this entire project, I'm really just figuring things out on the fly because it's a lot more sculptural and it doesn't have a lot of moving pieces. You may be wondering why I'm building a robot for a board sports company. And for a while, I was wondering the same thing. But by the end, it seemed to make sense. It's a fun, visually attractive installation to have around at events, and it'll also be able to hold a Onewheel if all goes to plan. This is a whole different ballgame than any of my previous projects. Because of its large size and sculptural form, this build doesn't require the same level of precision as making a record cabinet. However, it'll be challenging in its own right, because I'll have to exercise a level of quick thinking and designing on the fly that I'm not used to. I couldn't tell you what angle I cut these plywood pieces at. I just set the table saw to an angle I thought looked good and made the cuts. Okay, so I've got both of my legs glued up. They're still pretty rough, but before I can start refining them and carving them, I need to add the feet to the bottom. I think there are two main styles of creating something, the engineer and the sculptor. With the engineer style of creating, you design everything beforehand, taking great care and obsessing over the details. I'm starting to learn that with these sculpture projects, it just looks pretty bad for quite a while, and you have to really trust in your own vision. The sculptor, on the other hand, works more loosely and adds and subtracts material as he sees fit. The sculptor doesn't have a list, but rather has a vision in his mind's eye of the desired result, and he finds clarity about the details as he makes progress. To be a sculptor requires more trust in your vision, because you're the only one who can see the final result, whereas with the engineer style, it's easier for outsiders to understand the entire plan and trust in the vision. Oh yeah. Okay, that looks a lot better. I'm pretty stoked with how this is looking. I feel like the curve really added a lot to the torso. The problem right now is that all of these sides are super flat, and in the drawing, they're either curved or have some sort of bevels. I had the rough shape of the torso, but it still looked pretty blocky and basic, So I started adding some dimension by cutting small pieces of wood and gluing them where I saw fit. I will say the sculptor style of building on the fly can be quite freeing, especially coming straight out of a year of studying design at school, where you have to do 100 sketches, CAD model, and a bill of materials, even before you make the first cut. So I finished adding all the pieces on the front, and I think it added a lot more dimension, which I'm very happy about. I just cut out these 2 pieces of basswood, which are gonna go on either side here. As I started constructing the upper torso, I could see things coming together, and a feeling of reassurance crept in, knowing that I was headed in the right direction. I was happy with my progress, but there's still a lot of unknowns. How would I attach the head? How would I even make the head? How would the round shoulders bridge the gap between the torso and the arms? So I've kind of been putting off carving the feet, mainly because it's a little bit intimidating when they look this blocky and this bad.
Brother, what's that, brother?
My best analogy for how this felt is running down a path in the woods at night with a headlamp on. You can only see the terrain 10 feet in front of you, so you're constantly making decisions for where to best place your feet. You have a rough idea of the destination you're running to, but you don't know what lies in between. Alright, I think I'm pretty much done carving with the turbo plane. I will say this project is going a lot faster than my 1000 sculpture. It's just a massive scale in comparison, and I think it's a lot harder to mess up. These next few days though are going to be a little bit challenging because tomorrow is supposed to hit 108 degrees. So that means I have to wake up early, get down here, and get all my work done before noon. The temperature did in fact reach 108 degrees, and my work days were shortened considerably. I trimmed off the excess plywood using one of these oscillating tools and got to work sanding everything smooth. After a few hours of belt sanding, it was time to pull out my Foredom grinder and carve some of the detail lines in the feet. This is the same machine that I used to carve the 1000 sculpture, and I love it because it allows for fine control of the details, and you get to use these tiny little carbide burrs. One of the biggest unknowns I had to find a solution for was how was I going to make these big round parts for the knees and shoulders. Unfortunately, the basswood is not the best for lathe turning, and I ran into some issues. Let me show you what's happening. The good thing is that this is super round now, but the bad thing is all of this chip out. I should have anticipated that the basswood would tear out on the end grain. I sharpened my chisels and I tried my best to get a smoother finish, but it wasn't perfect. I let it be and I decided I'd smooth it out with wood filler later on. So these round pieces are gonna be the shoulder joints, and they're gonna go right here. I think it would look a little bit weird if I just attached it directly like this. Plus that wouldn't be a very strong connection. So my plan is to... I think when the graphic designer at One Wheel drew this up, they intended for these round parts to mimic the form of the One Wheel's tire. Before, I said this is a new type of project for me. And sure, I've never built a 4-foot tall robot for a board sports company. I've never even done a commission piece this big either. But to say this is completely new would be a lie. As much as something may feel foreign, it's almost always a combination of skills you've acquired from past experiences. This can be seen in both the process of the engineer and the sculptor. While the engineer is able to combine skills from building previous rockets and analyzing where they fail, the sculptor is constantly improving the connection between their hand and their mind as they hone their craft. But neither go from complete beginner to building something greatly complex. I've wood turned before, I've carved smaller sculptures, and fabricated things out of plywood. Yet this project is an amalgamation of all of them, forming an experience that feels oddly unique and familiar at the same time. What could it be? I have a mystery package here. It's actually not a mystery to me. I know what's in this box, but you don't. I've had to be very careful with this box because what is inside is very important, and there's only one in the world. Dude. I should probably not be doing that. They told me to be very careful with this because this is the only trophy for Race for the Rail, which is the biggest one-wheel race.
And they are off. Into the birdie.
Oh, look at this.
Oh my God. Oh! Two-time Race for the Rail champion!
Now the problem is, the one-wheel race is in less than a week. So I only have a couple hours to figure out how to incorporate this into the sculpture. Ooh, set it down very carefully. So the plan is to have the sword slot in like this. The scale of the sword really does match the robot. I did not plan that out. The blade of the sword is actually one of the side rails of the one-wheel board, which I think is machined out of a block of aluminum and then powder coated. Because of the graphics and the powder-coated finish, it's able to be scratched somewhat easily, so I decided to add this leather on the inside of the sword holder so it wouldn't scuff the blade. There's something greatly reassuring about realizing that every new project is in some ways a combination of your past successes, a remix of what you've learned in the past. Every skill you gain along the way is building towards something greater that you may not even know or anticipate. I've surfed, I've snowboarded, and I've skated, and the combination of all those skills made riding a one-wheel for the first time feel effortless. That is a snug fit, I will say. I think that's about all I'm going to be able to do because I have to send this sword back today. When you're building on the fly like this, all the design decisions you made throughout the process inform the next choices you're going to make. And because of that, it gets easier to decide what to do next. The amount of options that look good become less and less the further you are into the build. Much like putting together a jigsaw puzzle, where the amount of places a puzzle piece can go get fewer and fewer towards the end, and you can begin to see the full picture the puzzle forms. To finish off the legs, I glued in the round pieces I turned on the lathe, and started work on the arms. Projects are very similar to mountains. There's a false summit to almost every project I've done. It's the point that time seems to slow. The peak is in sight and the final climb seems like it'll be a breeze. You're about 80% there. You underestimate how much work it'll take to get there. How much more time, how much more energy it requires. Because of this, you slow down to a leisurely pace. But then, reality starts to hit you. You don't have much more time to reach your goal. The guys from One Wheel are coming up from California to pick up the sculpture in a rental van in just a couple days. You still have to reach your goal safely, and you can't be hasty, otherwise you could get hurt, or your workmanship could suffer. At this point, I needed to figure out how the sculpture would actually hold the one wheel, which is arguably the most important element of this project. One Wheel had sent me one of their GTs, which is their biggest board, and it's going to be the one that the sculpture is holding. I was able to use this board as a reference and position the hollow plywood arms in relation to it. And I got to work making some of the detail pieces to make the arms feel more three-dimensional. When you're in this stage of the build and time is ticking, you really have to be methodical about how you spend your energy, what can be simplified and what should stay complicated. And some things just can't be rushed, like carving the hands. I shaped, I sanded, I figured out how pieces would connect, and I kept working late into the night, knowing that tomorrow would start the final push to the summit. I think that trusting yourself is one of the hardest but most important skills you can have. So many creative people have fantastic ideas, but don't trust themselves enough to bring them to life. Perhaps it's a fear of disappointing themselves or others, or just not believing they have the skills, when in reality, they've been acquiring skills for many years and they just can't see it. While this robot sculpture doesn't take home any medals for complexity, functionality, or level of detail compared to my other projects, it's projects like these that allow me to trust myself the most. Being given a brief, saying yes even though you've never made anything like this before, and figuring things out on the way. As playful and as fun as this robot is, to me it's a testament to trying something new and working intuitively, making decisions on the fly. It was 12:16 at night when I put on the final clear coat. And the next day, the guys from One Wheel would be arriving to see the sculpture for the first time. What's up, guys?
How's it going?
Good, how's it going?
Good, I'm Ryland.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you too. What's up, man? How's it
Kevin?
going? Kevin,
Nice
yeah.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Holy crap. Oh my god.
Dude. What? Is it clean?
It's clean, yeah.
With the sword in the back, dude.
Yeah.
Holy crap. That was so sick.
I love the like the little topographical stuff.
Honestly, this little bit of right? That little texture looks like he went into battle.
This is the heaviest part.
Oh wow.
Oh, wow, just like that.
But you made it look so easy. That looks way sicker than I thought it would ever be. You crushed it.
Thanks.
Our COO, who's the guy that gets us the swords and stuff, when I was like telling him about the sword, he's like, yeah, I don't think he understood the size of this all. And I was like, no, like it's gonna hold the one wheel. And he's like, wait, really? Like in the drawing? I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, okay.
Nice.
And he was all in once he realized that it was gonna be like to scale.
Yeah, I was super stoked when you guys reached out.
That was. Yeah, you got a lot of sawdust there on your face.
Hey man, I'm bored.